CPAC, one of the biggest conservative political action groups you will ever find. Back in the day in Reagan, it was a signal of conservative related progress. And until fairly recently, they had been pretty good at tailoring what they had in there. And more importantly, who was speaking, how they were acting to individuals within CPAC. It was always a play to pay arena, but we see this year a new level of unprofessionalism and Nazis. A lot of Nazis. Not using that word, calling them Nazis. They call themselves Nazis. But let's buckle up. There's a lot to cover here.
So Nazis found a disturbingly receptive environment at CPAC recently, openly discussing racist ideologies and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, raising concerns about the conference's direction and its association with Trump's wing of the party. Kellen, let's go.
Okay, let's start with the response that CPAC sent out. A lot of these people were videotaped. A lot of them videotaped themselves, made posts on social media, photographs. One of them was even a speaker. And in response, this is from the official CPAC Twitter. I'm just going to quote him. NBC's claim that there was a Nazi presence at CPAC 2024 is false, misleading, and grossly manipulative, especially coming from a writer who has carried the water for Hamas in much of his reporting on the Israel-Gaza war. See, those photos were fake, the videos were fake, the speeches were fake, the recordings that conservatives took, the interracial couple that was harassed, they were planted there by the deep state. It's all a ruse. It's... As someone, and I'm also, I think I could speak for a couple other members of JNW, past and present, that as someone who's studying public relations, this is pathetic. Because when you embroil yourself in a controversy, like a pretty universal controversy, there are very few people in America, much less than an amount that you can actually pull support from, that would not take an issue with this. Most people have a problem with this. And I think that goes for right or left. People don't like Nazis because Nazis, fun fact, are bad.
Oh, mercy.
And so what you normally would do in a situation like this, especially because when the accusations were first coming out, the response was, oh, we don't support Nazis. They're incredibly harmful to America. The response is simple. All you have to say is, we're going to investigate and do better next time. That's all you have to say. And people will defend CPAC for you. Quite literally, a lot of people who have previously supported CPAC will not be happy to still support an organization that supports Nazis. But an organization that made a mistake and seeks to correct, they'll support that. You can get your audience to defend you if you communicate to them that you are willing to do better and that you are taking steps, real steps to fix this problem. But no, we're not getting anything like that. And it makes it really hard to defend CPAC because there were Nazis. It's provable. Security footage, photos by journalists, not to mention them saying themselves that they were there. Some of them had badges. Some of them are on the record for having been there. That was what really got me.
CPAC Twitter. To borrow a phrase from a show I used to listen to back in Chicago, on the Boris and Bernstein show, they had a little thing in their show called "Who You Crapping," and this is perfect. This is one of those moments where you just have to ask the Conservative Political Action Conference, "Who you crapping?" Seriously, I saw it for myself. It was on C-SPAN. I saw it for myself. I saw it later in other reporting, and this is I'm in my 50s. Grew up in a very liberal household around liberals. And as I was saying earlier, off camera to Kellen and our producer, Aaron, that over the years, as I gotten older and, experienced the world more, became an entrepreneur, and realized the world is on my shoulders now, and became a parent, husband, et cetera, that, okay, my views towards the world have, kind of moderated. And the Republican Party and conservatives have some really good ideas.
They do.
Some really good
They
ideas.
really do.
But then
This happens, and it makes it challenging for because David and I are more moderate voters. We have our leanings on certain issues. Everybody does, but we're kind of on the more moderate end of the spectrum.
agree.
And it is not easy to work myself up to vote Republican. Because weirdly enough, this is a thing. You have to look at their character more than ever.
That's right.
Because every other one, they're either strongman state. They say I'm not racist, but or something to that degree. And it's like, sure, I can appreciate some of your policies, and I can agree with some critiques of the Democrats, because the Democrats also,
Definitely.
they've been screwing up a lot lately.
Exactly.
But that doesn't defend this. That doesn't give you a free pass, to my vote because of that. That doesn't mean that you yourselves can skirt responsibility because your opponents are bad too. It doesn't prevent you from becoming worse.
Whether it's, Nazis at CPAC, or the death of Heather Hellier in 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia. What's missing is a unequivocal condemnation of these behaviors, of these incidents, from people involved in CPAC, people involved in the Charlottesville deadly incident there during the rallies, condemnation from conservative leaders. And you would think the conservative movement would want to grow its numbers. I honestly think they really don't want to grow their numbers.
It was funny because when you look at what the issue, because they encountered a lot of issues during the midterms, and all precedent shows that they should have swamped the 2022 midterms. The economy was in the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
The approval rating of the opposite party was in the gutter. The president is unpopular. That's how that's a perfect recipe. It takes some special circumstances to screw it up. But when it came to the Senate, they did. And one of the moments I liked a lot was when Mitch McConnell went to the press and just told them why. Candidate quality matters. You can't just put Dr. Oz or a football player and expect people to trust them.
Exactly.
He's like, you can't just put random people. It's like spending your money. You have to know where you throw your money. You don't put your money towards races that don't matter, like a Republican versus Republican race, just because you have personal issues with one of them. That's not a responsible way to run a party. But another thing he noted was messaging on issues.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the Republican Party came off to voters as an extreme party. A lot of it was the abortion issue. No small part thanks to Lindsey Graham, and what only took him a couple months to try to introduce a federal restrictive bill.
Yes.
And so the issue has been clear. I was browsing social media, Ben Shapiro just flat out said it. The Republican Party is coming off as extreme on the abortion issue. I mean, he was using a more specific example there, but that's the general issue. Conservative leadership knows this. They know that the fundamental issue they're having, isn't that their opponents are bad, and they keep leaning into this idea that their opponents are bad. All data shows that it's because many people perceive the Republican Party as the more radical party.
Correct.
And whether or not they vote for him is more dependent on whether or not they want a radical solution right now. But we lived in such an age of chaos lately, and in no small part, and this is like after those radical solutions. So you have to be able to, like you said, bring people back into the fold. A lot of recent decisions push people away from the party. issues like this push people away from the party. It's not complicated.
The in vitro fertilization issue that's going on right now.
Yeah.
You know, that what's happened in Alabama, it reverberates throughout the other 49 states. And so the extremism
Mhm.
is now blowing up even more so in the face of the conservative movement,
Mhm.
in the face of Republicans. And I just don't understand the run to the extreme end of the party is just really turning off people who are looking at the party and saying, do better.
Yeah. Well, I have my theory on this, and I think most of it has to do with the internet. And there's two different facets to it. One is organizing. It has been
Mhm.
shown fairly conclusively that people who are hardcore into a certain subject have an easier time organizing community. So
They get passionate.
radicals, and this is radicals on any end of the spectrum on any issue, have an easy time actually organizing together because they view a lot of things the same, and they feel like they belong.
Sure.
So these groups do a great job organizing. A lot of moderates do not. So then what happens whenever a when the Oklahoma when the bill from the gentleman from Oklahoma, the bipartisan uh, border bill comes out,
Yes.
these extreme groups who do not represent the general public
Small
make a
portion.
huge stink, a big chunk of
The
noise.
loudest voices.
And you even had an influencer who I don't mention by name on the shows ever because he doesn't deserve my breath.
Okay.
Flat out just said, bipartisanship is doing what the Democrats want. It's immoral.
Wow.
Chump, what are you doing?
Wow.
Chump for Trump, Jesus.
Or the immigration issue,
Another issue.
That's what you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing. But that was part one of what I was saying. That radical groups can make huge stinks, and it can blow it up bigger than it reasonably needs to be. And so you don't want negative press, so you don't want to kick him out. And the other big issue we see is after we got the age of the internet, we got this internet, we got an unprecedented level of platforming
yes.
for good and bad people alike. I mean, we get to share our views so much more. And I think my generation, at least, is more in tune with First Amendment issues than they ever have been. I mean, we care a lot. I mean, when people are banned off of Twitter, it's a big deal. It's like a free speech violation, even though most people I think know that Twitter is technically allowed to do that.
Exactly.
But I think so many groups who have effectively organized have done such a good job convincing Americans that you must platform people, that everybody needs a platform, and that to censor other Americans is to violate their First Amendment rights. But when you look at how the First Amendment has always been used, how the courts have always used it, that's not true. You, as an event organizer, can kick someone out of your event. You,
true.
as a owner of a discussion forum, can censor somebody because it's your organization. Therefore, you have rights to not have words put in your mouth. You have your own rights. They have theirs. They're entitled to be able to speak, but they're not entitled to a particular form.
Right.
But that has been lost, I think, more than anything else. So I'm guessing that as that view grows, as that messaging comes out more, that free speech is absolute. Like you see those people on the street that say change my mind, or people who
Right.
just make a ruckus in public and say like First Amendment, just because you're so preoccupied with whether or not you didn't stop to think if you should. You don't have, just because it's their right to speak
Think about it.
does not mean that you have to let them speak at your event. And I think
That's correct.
I think a lot of people, I think Matt Schlapp and many other members organizing the event, were scared of what they did if they actually did keep these people out, because they were going to cry oppression. They were going to cry oppression. First Amendment rights. CPAC is censoring First Amendment rights.
Then have that conversation. Take them on. Condemn their ideology. Condemn their actions. That is the opportunity to have that conversation and show there is no tolerance for that type of language, behavior, action, a missed opportunity for CPAC.
Yeah. And by having a frank and honest discussion about what the First Amendment means, because this part of it about forum hosts is pretty unambiguous. Luckily, a lot of things about the First Amendment are ambiguous, but about the rights of forum owners is not ambiguous. The forum owners' rights trump those of an individual speaker, because an individual speaker can pick a different forum.
True.
If you could have a frank and honest discussion about that, the law as it is, that could also be a good opportunity to demonstrate how the Republicans are the voice of reason. Again, missed opportunities. That it's become so social politics that you don't really have professionals at the helm of a lot of these things anymore. like
these platforms.
Or look at your college, look at colleges, any college students out there. If you go to your college Republicans or college Democrats, I remember I've sat in meetings with both. The first meeting of anytime sitting with the Republicans, Turning Point USA, Turning Point USA, Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk is an activist whose knowledge isn't really professional. He's not a uniquely insightful person. He doesn't really have much to say. He's very opinionated. He's an activist. He'll criticize every other activist except himself. But this is what's being advertised to people in a time where younger people, need to find a place to belong. This is where they're told that they belong. That if you believe in conservative stances, you are with this organization. This organization is with Turning Point USA. If you go to a meeting with a lot of Republicans and Democrats, or go to parties with a lot of Republicans and Democrats, and you express a different opinion in front of two or more of them, you're in for it. You are in for it, because a lot of these activists do not have tolerance for that. They do not have tolerance for that. And these people that will shout down you for having a different opinion, Turning Point USA, the Nazis were partying with them at the Young Republican mixer outside of CPAC.
And that's where it begins.
Yes, these Nazis have influence with the people who influence the young people at a time where they want to find belonging. And our generation does not feel belonging very easily. And it makes us vulnerable to Nazis again. And so I'm extremely disappointed in the lack of leadership, the lack of long-term thinking, the sudden reaction of quick blame the Democrats, just the lack of professionalism.
It's lazy
by speakers. And so many speakers who were giving serious talks would interlace jokes, sometimes in very poor faith. Like the gentleman who called for the end of democracy is like, oh, we almost got there on January 6th. He has said, after, as well as you can see a little bit during it, because he inflects his tone of voice a little bit, he was joking about the whole thing. He wasn't being serious about the time to overthrow democracy. He was advocating for more overtly Christian government, but he didn't advocate for the end of democracy directly. But then I ask, what did that joke accomplish? Your goal is to trigger people, but what does that accomplish?
Right.
All right. You're here to get an agenda out. You're here to create a policy. And you get distracted by I'm going to try to bait the media. I'm going to try to make the libs mad. I'm going to make them mad. It's not productive. Not to mention, he may have realized that he was making satire, but some of his audience didn't, because one of the other speakers was like, amen. And a bunch of people were like, amen. And then some of them were clapping, some of them were cheering, some of them were taking it seriously. There was a liberal journalist. Now, granted, she's a pretty kind of a fighter type, so I get why they have a rivalry, but she was just sitting at a bar, and a group of CPAC attendees came to that bar after. And one of them just shouted, he called me the N-word. And then they started recording. They started repeating it. Just, again,
wow.
You're just triggering. We're just triggering them. But what are you accomplishing? Do I want children running my government? No.
Content, views, eyeballs on their movement.
Yeah, eyeballs on their movement. But I ask you, Vero, what does that accomplish for you? Does that fix your issues? No, it doesn't.
Right.
And it's easy to buy into the hype because, people cook it up as much as they can. But It's all smoke and mirrors. And as these man children reach higher and higher points of power, incompetent government. And that is worse than there's very few things worse than an incompetent government. People already hate our government now. It can get worse.
Is democracy on its way out the door?
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like it would be in total. I think a restricted form of democracy could be. I think it could be. I think that could be on the way. It could, but again, we'll have to see in the Constitution whether the Supreme Court takes issue with them or not. There's a lot to see. I mean, again, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't see all into the future. But if I did have a crystal ball, it would tell you to hit that like button.
Indeed.
The greater wisdom of the cosmos. Hit the like button, subscribe, share it. We want to create a conversation not just about these Nazis, because we're not just here to tell you the obvious. Nazis are bad. Racism is bad. No, we already know that. But to have a meaningful conversation about who is running our government, what policy solutions are we pursuing, and try to get both sides of the story where we can. We're not always perfect, but nobody is. And we would love to have your feedback because you are a part of this conversation. You are a part of every story that we run here.
Indeed, Kellen. Whether it's Nazis at CPAC or Nazis marching through Altamont Springs, Florida, these incidents underscored the urgent need for vigilant scrutiny of political gatherings and a reformation of democratic values against all forms of hate and bigotry. And we want to make sure that we keep you informed on things like this and keep you engaged and raise your civic engagement IQ. So please, like Helen said, comment. We want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
We want the facts, not your feelings.
Yeah. Please, if you're gonna make a claim, like we would appreciate it if you can cite something, so that way we can be on the same level of discussion as you are. And we respond to nearly every comment, unless we're certain it's a bot. That's the case where we don't. But we like conversations. We have to. This is becoming the status quo. We gotta fight against that.
Right. We're your political innovators. That's Kellen. I'm David. We are the Jay in Washington Network. We'll see you the next time. Thank you.